What's up, lads? You're with Budget Monk, and welcome to a new video here. We're covering the Bask in the Glory achievement, which I achieved last week. This is our campaign here, 1569, looking absolutely glorious, in my opinion, allied to a huge France and due to their quality and so on, a somewhat powerful Poland. We actually defeated the Ottomans just for the memes, the overkill, while we were chilling. Felt really, really good. France at the time was rivaling them, I think. I don't know why he switched it up. But yeah, we were able to call France, Poland in and defeat the Ottomans, who are absolutely massive, as you can see, so it's quite satisfying. But Navarra, really, really cool. Bask in the Glory. I'm not the biggest fan of the achievement, which is to convert the majority of Iberia to Basque culture, especially because we are a empire government rank, which gives you the cultural union, of course, meaning it's literally, there's no incentive to do it. So it's a bit of a gimmicky achievement to convert the majority of Iberia to your culture. That's the achievement. But it is a good excuse to play Navarra, who, of course, is an amazing, very cool nation. So we're just going to show off a little bit of the state of the game here, just briefly, showing that we're by far the majority leader in Seville, and well before the age of, or the global trade spawns, we're totally on point to spawn global trade, which feels good. It's always a good benchmark, especially on very hard difficulty as a one province miner. You know you're doing well in terms of finances if you're going to spawn global trade, and you gain the benefits of that. It's one of the few institutions which is somewhat within the player's control to spawn and receive the plus 100 tool monarch points as well as reform progress. 50 ducats a month, guys. Pretty good. Pretty good this early into the game. You know, we've had better, obviously, but we're definitely snowballing. Just absolutely glorious. We go over buildings and so on, just absolutely pimped out, including manufactories. Very cool. So I want to show off our vassal really quickly. We've actually vassalized Portugal, and I want to do the same thing with Castile here. You can see that we've diminished them down to these small little island nations, and therefore their slice of the pie in terms of trade is a lot smaller. If they are our vassal, we could of course take their trade, which gives us supremacy over the node, assuming the pirates weren't here right now. So we could route that out, but you can see France has zero control in actuality. It means less than 0.5%, that's why it's saying zero. And yeah, if we're asked to vassalize Castile and take his trade, we would have supremacy. But then the reason we do that is because they are the overlord of all of the colonial nations. So therefore, they are pulling the trade into Seville. Very, very cool, because myself personally, I have not gone colonial ideas. And instead, what you do is you make a truckload of money by getting the supremacy, and then we actually pay, in this case, Portugal, who is a very small nation, you can see almost 7 ducats, in order to subsidize the colonies. So remember, colonies always have a maintenance, guys. So we may as well pay the AI, and then they put that money into colonizing, which generates goods produced in the New World. They bring it in, and you reap the rewards, right? So you're basically paying colonists either way, but this way we're paying them to colonize, not us. Very cool, and just very, very satisfying. We can form Spain, of course, guys. And you can form Spain and have a Castile exist at the same time. But I theorize that we would continue to manipulate, utilize the Navarran missions, like the restoration of the Union here, giving us the ability to personal union France if we continued. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about tips and things, guys. Navarra is in quite a unique position because basically all three of your neighbors want to diplo-vassalize you, and they flip defensive with you. If they don't begin defensive, they typically flip defensive. So if we look at a random nation here, you can see that the attitude modifier normally means there's negative 20 reasons for them to ally you, a nation in general. And this is pretty typical. It's something that is ingrained into most people. That negative 20 is normally there. And obviously, if they flip friendly relations, it is plus 50. But the thing is, the negative 20 disappears. So it's actually worth 70 reasons. That's why, more often than not, you can ally friendly nations even when you're allied to their rival, that sort of thing, due to them being friendly. It's so swingy. Well, defensive, which is when they want to diplo-vassalize you, is similar, because I think it's only plus 20 reasons when they're defensive, but it eliminates the negative 20. So it gives you like 40 reasons, and you can pretty much just ally whoever you want. Now, remember that if you want to PU Aragon like we did, that takes place when the Aragonese ruler passes away, and that will give Aragon the restoration of the Union against you, Navarra, meaning that despite how things seem, you can't have diplomacy with Aragon in the long term or the immediate long term, despite how it might seem. So if you're theorizing, oh, what if we allied England and Aragon and use them against Castile as our opener, you have to understand that Aragon's going to disappear at any moment. So they are the one you can't ally, the others you can. Alternatively, what I knew from previous patches, which continues to be the case, thankfully, is that you can, if you wish, wait until France inevitably takes these, and then France will want to actually diplomat vassalize you and flip defensive. That has been my experience. So I recommend, if when you're analyzing, what should we do, what's going to be the best combination of allies, I recommend using Castile and France against Aragon to PU them, if possible. So that would typically require France to be rivaling or have an enemy of Aragon. Otherwise, they're probably friendly with them, that sort of thing. But that's what you should be gunning for. That's what we were able to do. And the other thing, guys, is Portugal can be allied. They're right on the verge, but being a Catholic, you can take the plus 25 relations, from the estates. You can royal marriage them instantly. Scornful insult, that's 75 relations. You begin at 25 relations by being Catholic, and you can improve by 100. This means you can get up to 200 relations with Portugal, even if they don't flip friendly attitude, typically by taking reputation from your advisors, or building over your force limit, right? If you're 10 years into the game, you're not doing anything because you're stuck here, you can actually go over your force limit or tech up military ahead of Portugal because they begin with a 1 in mil. All of these combination of things are going to put you right around the money mark to pull in an alliance with Portugal. And what's significant about this is two things. If you're going to turn against Castile, which you typically will do, you're able to inevitably use your favors with Portugal to break alliance with Castile, making them that much more vulnerable. And the second thing is that nowadays, I'll try to demonstrate this, strategic interest is your entire culture group. So the AI in the past would not consider Iceland strategic, in this case Denmark. It's too far away, they don't care. It's very uncommon to be able to give a nation like an overseas colony, they consider it a liability. Not anymore if it is their culture. So Austria, for example, boom, look at that. He wants the whole German culture and more missions and things and claims. Now, the reason that this is not strategic is because he's inevitably allied to some German who is vitaling it. So they're saying, we want this 100%. Austria is respecting that. That's why this is not strategic. Well, you can do the exact same thing with Portugal, guys. Like I just tried to demonstrate there, the entire German group. Nowadays, Portugal will consider Aragon's provinces to be strategic, meaning you can actually promise him land, call him to arms, or promise him land over here, which you would typically not do. In my case, I vital interested all of this stuff, and I left this available, which I was able to promise Portugal land, but I actually gave it to France. So if you, as the player, promise him land, and he's joining with the assumption of obtaining these 3 provinces, but you give every occupation to France, and France wants them, then you as the player, you can't fulfill the agreement with Portugal, and he's satisfied with that. So just that's the little cheeky trick that we used. I was able to ally Castile with defensive, Portugal later on into the game, and France. And the way France happened, like I said, I planned to do it defensive after he lost this. Well, we were sitting here doing nothing, and I decided, why not enforce peace on England with the surrender of Maine? Jump in, get some loot. And what that did is I had to get 100 relations with France in order to enforce peace. And believe it or not, guys, France actually flipped friendly. So I don't know how consistent that is, but keep in mind that I was fighting in the same war as France, as the defender, because England is the attacker and we enforced peace on him. That was my move. And France flipped friendly throughout the course of the war. Typically, when you're involved in a war, you'll have a negative 1000 modifier to allying somebody. But that's not the case if you're the war leader. And in fact, it's not the case if the two nations are participating in the same war on the same side of the war. So you can actually ally somebody when you're an attacker in a war, for people who don't know, if, for example, that nation used the great power intervene and they're on the same side of the war as you, then there's no negative 1000. But anyway, in this case, he flipped friendly. We were able to ally him, so it was awesome, and it actually meant that I could sit on these forts, establishing some favors with him from participation in the initial war. And I, being a kingdom as Navarra, you have 3 diplomats. Highly recommend, guys, that you just sit on curry favors with Castile, max relations with these nations, particularly France. Curry, max relations, curry with Portugal, using those diplomats to your advantage, and just doing things as efficiently as we can. So you can see soon after the surrender of Maine finishes, we go in against Aragon. This was my personal union. About 12 years into the game, we've actually pieced out. Again, I promised Portugal land here, called France in, and called Castile in, which we just got to 10 favors, no promised land required, all to PU Aragon. Now, some people might say, isn't that overkill? I don't remember exactly, it was last week, but Aragon pulls like the Emperor as an ally, guys. So we did really depend on all of that. And in my case, Aragon was rivaling France, meaning I could use France to my advantage. For some reason, he wants these provinces, and you are able to promise him land, but sometimes he's friendly attitude with Aragon. So if you're going to use the same route, which is to basically just abuse relations with France, there is RNG involved. In my case, I was petrified by the fact that Castile was not rivaling France, and I figured they could ally them. So France typically has all of these subjects in the early game and stuff like that, and especially if you're able to pull a relation slot with him, he's not going to ally nations who are even friendly with him. But as he starts annexing his subjects and freeing up relation slots, he typically would ally. In my case, I was just desperately hoping that if we disappear Aragon, that Castile or France would rival one another. And that did not happen. So I'm sitting here thinking, uh-oh, we've PU'd Aragon, that's about all I can do. But thankfully, the BI happens, which you'll see here momentarily. Brittany gets it, would you believe it? That Castile was rivaling Burgundy, and boom, he drops it on France. So now I'm over the moon. That's how it worked out for me. I was able to use France against Aragon, as you can see, and then ultimately Castile as well. So we ditched Castile at this stage, using my favors with Portugal to break alliance with Castile eventually. This was an event where I had a claim on Aragon, and you have a chance of actually taking a province from your subject if you have a claim. There's the first province that we gained, doubling up, which is great because I was just developing the mountains. You know, what can you do? But doing all I could. And keep in mind, for people who think this is ugly, yes, it is ugly, but my plan was to return core using the return core mechanic. If we just are friends with France forever, we can return core. And speaking of which, when you pass the initial mission for Navarra to take this province, it gives you a core on this province. And if you're best buddies with France, then you can actually use the return core mechanic with favors to gain this province for free. Nice little advantage to playing Navarra on this patch as opposed to older patches. And boom, you can see finally, after all this time, Navarra chunking Castile, feeling absolutely amazing, taking about half of the trade centers in Iberia. Just like that, I believe there's 2 here, 1 here, and 2 here. So we have 3 ourselves. And I've already ditched Portugal as soon as we broke his alliance with Castile, because he won't help against his historical friend. But 5 years later, we go in and chunk Portugal as well. And just like that, we were feeling pretty good. Aragon was appeased around this time in terms of loyalty, and the majority of Iberia was ours. The writing is on the wall, and after our truce, we go in against Castile again. I very deliberately went in to encircle Iberia because we were somewhat lucky, but it's very likely if Castile or the Iberians are going down that the North Africans will go into Iberia. So I encircled it, like ensuring that we would obtain that ourselves and it wouldn't go that way, because I think in my case Morocco was allied to the Ottomans, you know, and we couldn't actually potentially destroy them. Annexing Aragon. Now I know I said I would return core here. I had stacked annexation cost reduction modifiers, and we got an event, guys. So basically, I re-released these two provinces as Catalonia, as you'll see, and then we started returning core to that, just because it was very efficient to annex Aragon at that stage. But yeah, the rest is history. So in my case, I went for influence and religious, mostly for the memes. Religious is nice, and we did end up Deus vaulting here and stuff like that. And it just makes it very, very efficient to actually culture convert at that stage. The achievement is a little bit lackluster, and it kind of forced my hand a little bit to take ideas that I'm not that keen on. And as far as Navarra itself, you do have the ability to PU France. I don't really know what is the most optimized and efficient way to do that, really. You'd need the dream game, because this patch is bloody hard, and I would, ideally, we would have already switched over to Spanish Nation, in my opinion. But I'm sitting around here twiddling my thumbs. In order to PU France, you require to take these areas, permaclaims, and then you have the PU Casus Belli on France. So it's worth being Navarra, continuing to be Navarra, not Spain. But in my opinion, I would have liked to already set that up in a dream game. Navarra has great potential, but it's really hard, and I think you'd really, really need some good luck to bring them up to what I consider to be elite, powerful nation opium status, such as my favorite opium, brigands. That's, of course, the strongest opium in my opinion. With that being said, that was the summary, I suppose, the retrospective of the Navarran run here, bask in the glory. I hope that you learned something. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you enjoy this kind of casual content. And either way, I'm working on a really good video, which I hope you guys enjoy. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.